Hi, everybody, and welcome to a downtrodden, relaxing episode of Two Gays, One Episode. I'm Alex,
And I am GoatJesus.
and I'm feeling very upset today because everyone in Evangelion is just so sad. No one seems to be able to do anything. Um, in what
Except
episode,
die.
Michael? What episode are we covering today?
We're covering episode 23, Tears, or how Ray died and exploded a lot and is dead now. But not really.
It's still a shorter title than Those Women Long for the Touch of Others and Thus Invited Their Kisses.
It's true. First of all, I want to say that I do like this episode. We're gonna kind of rag on its structure a little bit because at least I think it's a little poorly structured. Would you agree with that?
Well, yeah, I brought that up to you, so yes, I do agree with it.
Okay, well, we're
We're in the moment. We're playing. No, Michael, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you.
But yeah, I don't think this is one of the best written episodes, which is funny because the guy who wrote it, he's pretty good. He wrote episode 16 and 22, which I both like those episodes, but
I literally just had his name. Oh, we have it right here. It's Hiroshi Yamaguchi.
Hiroshi Yamaguchi, yeah. But this one doesn't really climax in like a normal way where things escalate and kind of ramp up. It's very it kind of peaks in the middle and then sort of slumps for the rest of it until kind of the end.
Would you say it climaxes prematurely?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think that its midpoint as well with Ray exploding is more intense dramatically than the random Ray clones being killed.
That's the more emotionally affecting moment, though. I actually like that the episode ends with that.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I really like Ritsuko as a character, but I don't think it's as quite as grand as Ray exploding in a sacrificial moment.
I think what we would have gotten with someone like, say, Satsukawa as a writer is he really would have driven home that this was a Ritsuko story. So we would have opened with Ritsuko, and there would have been more happening with her throughout the episode, more analysis, more.
Yeah, there's not really like a whole lot of Ritsuko focus at the start. Yeah.
No, it's kind of, like I said, Ritsuko's just kind of sad and like sitting in her office a lot. There's not really a lot of Bible. Like, she should have had more scenes with Masato or whatever.
It's just kind of confusing because there's, if she's the A plot, she should have the most scenes devoted to her. And there are some scenes in this episode. Like I think she goes to see Seele later on. But yeah, it's not heavy on any one character. It jumps between pretty much everyone in equal measure, so it's a little confusing as to like who this is about, what it's kind of going for. I mean, I've always thought of this as the Ray episode because the big pivotal two moments kind of revolve around Ray.
It's called Ray 3 as well. That's the other title, not
just Tears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tears and Crying and Ray 3. Okay. Yeah, well, Ray 3. So, but Ray's kind of interesting because her character, I mean, we'll talk about her character later, but she goes through kind of an arc. I want to say that semi completes itself, and then we kind of soft reset Ray's character.
Well, she does legitimately die in this episode. The Ray we know dies.
Ray 2, though, like there's a lot of speculation about just the fact that Ray herself, her persona kind of manifests, like Ray 2, like a little bit kind of rubs off on Ray 3.
Oh, absolutely. So, she really reincarnates is what it is. She reincarnates as Ray 3, but she's kind of a different person.
It's definitely a reincarnation type of thing. Yeah. So how do we open up this episode, Alex?
So we kind of just see all the characters in their little spheres, and they're all kind of just chilling in their rooms. Misato's in her room, listening to Kaji's message to her over and over again, talking about the phone that won't ring. I guess the idea is that Kaji won't call her. Asuka is just like hanging out in Hikari's house playing video games. She's playing the brand new Sega Genesis system.
In the timeline where there was Sonic 5 on the Sega Genesis.
Yes. And Hikari's just staring at her going like, she won't leave. She won't leave. She's still here. Why is she still here? She won't go to school. She won't go home. She's still in my house. And then Asuka's like, let's go to bed. And then they sleep together, like like not in a pervy way, just in a they're just lying in bed together, and Asuka kind of pours her heart out to Akari, like, man, everything is so rough. I can't pilot the Ava anymore. I hate everybody. I'm so angry right now, but most of all, I'm angry with myself, and I can't stand myself. And Akari just looks at her and is like, "You're great. You shouldn't think that way." And it's like the most useless thing anyone's ever said.
I mentioned
And
this
Asuka's
before,
like,
but
"Gee,
it comes
thanks." She
across
goes back
as
to
like
bed.
it just comes across as like Japanese politeness or whatever. Like it's
Yeah.
not.
It's so useless, though. It does not help Asuka in the slightest.
Yeah, it's like empty. Do you think that everyone's in their room intentionally as kind of a motif of
It
like
doesn't feel that way, but I
isolation?
think so. I think so.
Yeah, because I know that Shinji's room has an AT field pattern rug on in it, which
Oh,
is
interesting.
yeah, because it's sort of like literally the walls that we put up around others and things like that. So,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also scenes of like Shinji standing in front of what is it, Asuka's door,
No,
and he
Masato's.
Misato's door, and he's like, I can't go in and talk with
Well,
her or whatever.
there's literally a note that says "Stay out, I'm busy" on the
Yeah,
door. So
yeah.
yeah, everyone's isolated from each other. And then no one's really trying to find Ritsuko, I guess. Ritsuko's just in her office smoking like 20 cigarettes because we see the ashtray full of cigarettes, and her grandmother calls and is like, "Your cat died." And Ritsuko's like, "Oh, okay." And she's like really upset about it, but she can't express that. And she's like, "Grandmother, please stop crying. It's okay. It's okay. I'll come visit. I'll come home. I'll see
There's
mother's grave." And
there's some interesting fan theories that the cat she's referring to on the phone call is Kaji. I think that's so it's like code or whatever. It's weird. It's weird.
that doesn't really make sense to me, but it's
Well,
interesting, I guess.
the thing is that people think that okay, so remember there was this old lady earlier on that Kaji
Hmm.
was talking to get intel, and she was feeding cats or feeding cats while talking to Kaji, and
Yeah.
people think that that's Ritsuko's grandmother, and so Ritsuko's grandmother is kind of like a double agenty type of figure that is giving information to Kaji, and then uh like saying the cat died is code name for like Kaji's dead or whatever, which would affect Ritsuko because she has like a personal connection to Kaji even beyond Misato. So
That's
it's
interesting. I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if that
how
makes
valid it
sense.
is. It's a theory,
No.
but
Like, Ritsuko's grandmother would have to be like 90 something probably, so I'm not sure how she's like running around as a secret agent feeding intel to people, but it's possible, I guess.
you know, maybe Ritsuko's mom could have been maybe the grandmother and the mom could have been young. I don't know.
Maybe
Young
she's only
parents.
70
Yeah.
something. I don't know. It's still pretty old to be running around talking to Kaji. The cat motif is interesting and kind of makes sense, I guess. But yeah, this scene, this little Ritsuko scene is really the Ritsuko's cat dying is almost the inciting incident of the episode in a way.
Mm.
Or the call to action. I forget the difference, but like yeah, this is really the moment where we get introduced to the main character of the episode, which I think is Ritsuko.
Inciting
And
incident is usually by the way the
okay, explain
event
that,
that
please.
throws the everyday out of disarray. It's the
Mm-hmm.
thing that kind of okay, so you set up the everyday life, and then the inciting incident is like what is weird, what is kind of out of place in the everyday life type of deal.
Yeah,
And then the call to action or the catalyst, you could say, is the thing that kind of pushes you into the second act. So it's the or point of attack. This is how at least I
mm-hmm.
learned it, was that it's another event that happens that goes like, okay, now we have to go on this quest or whatever that is in
Right. Okay, yeah.
that
So I'd say the
starts
cat
act two.
dying is the inciting incident. The call to action is the angel appearing, I think.
Yeah. You could say that exactly.
And both of those things happen very early in the episode. We're only at the 5 minute mark, and both of those things have happened, which is kind of insane.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of setup in this episode.
No, which is one of the things that we're both kind of critical about, is that we get
Yeah.
into what would be considered the second act pretty late. I mean, we were also talking about, okay, is it trying to go for Joe Hakyu structure, because Joe's first act in a Joe Hakyu would be kind of long, so you could sort of argue that if it's a Japanese structure, maybe Rei dying is the end of the first act, but it's
Yeah.
not really that. It can't really be that, because in Joe Hakyu there's still a escalation and tension ramping up, and we kind of just like flub after that. So
A little bit. Yeah, we can talk about it as we go through it.
Yeah.
So, what's the next thing that happened? The angel arrives. This is
Hmm.
one of the creepiest angels in the whole show, I think. Armisael, which is the angel of the womb. And its name means, I just saw it. It means Mountain of Judgment of God, which is that's a lot. There's a lot going on in that name. Mountain of Judgment of God. Uh, yeah, I'm not even sure what to make of that, to be honest. I
Well,
don't know if that has a lot to do with it.
the angel
The
of the
womb
womb
makes
makes
sense.
sense. Yeah, because
Total sense.
we'll see
If only with the
how
imagery.
Rey kind of when she explodes herself, there's kind of womb imagery and pregnancy sort of stuff, and then the reincarnation, rebirth kind of motif that Rey 3 goes under makes sense. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, angel of the womb, angel of birth, that type of thing. So,
It's also interesting because like not babies, not infants, but fetuses, in a way they're almost parasites, right? So they
oh,
like they
yeah.
a little bit, and this thing is like a tapeworm, so it's really a parasite, is what it is, and it attaches itself to people. So there's that connection too.
Hmm.
Um, uh,
As for Mountain of Judgment of God, we do interestingly see uh something that I guess the fan base is called like the Tower of Angels, where
oh yeah,
after Rey is exploding themselves, it
her big
there's
pregnant
this
belly. Yeah,
weird organic mass of all the angels that we've seen up to this point exploding out of her. It's almost like the tapeworm itself contained like all the DNA for all of the angels themselves. And so there's kind of, maybe that has like to ties into the mountain of God type of thing. So
yeah,
I don't know.
a little bit interesting. This episode is so. Someone had some issues. Like, I'm starting to suspect that Anno might have some issues with sex and gender, based on this episode alone. Just some of the discussions we've
As
had
if
in
we
the
didn't get that before.
first 8 minutes of this episode. Yeah, it was very apparent in this one. The angel's a tapeworm, and it makes Ray have a big pregnant belly in the Ava unit, and
Yeah, there's something vaguely sperm cellish about it too.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on. Gendo, by the way, mentions here somewhere that he's like send Asuka in, and then Masato's like, she won't be able to do anything, and Gendo's like, I don't care, she could be a distraction. Maybe she'll die and Rey will live. He doesn't say that literally, but that's basically what he's saying. So yeah, no one really cares about Asuka right now except Masato. Also interestingly, when the angel appears, Masato isn't in the command center. She's driving in her car and kind of just like going past it on her way to the command center. Also, I guess they have a new command center up because they haven't been in the. It's been set up, I guess, because they haven't been for the. Oh no, they were, weren't they? In the REL fight. No, they were. Never mind. Sorry, I'm totally wrong. Last episode, they were in the command center.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I guess another thing that ties into that gender point that you were talking about was
Mm-hmm.
you have this note in here where it's like Armisael is stabbed and it screams like Shinji.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty funny.
It screams like a human.
Is
Anyway,
it Megumi Ogata who is
it
screaming?
sounds like just Shinji screaming.
Yeah.
Uh, you might have to listen to it later, but yeah, it just sounded like Shinji to me. So, and that's when, it's when the things are crawling all over his hands already. So yeah, it would make sense if it's like sort of,
If it has a connection to
yeah,
Shinji. Yeah.
yeah. So I believe it's Megumi Okada screaming. But yeah. So then the whole point of this angel is kind of that it's completely arcane because they can't fight it in a normal way. They're like trying to fight it physically, but it's just like I love you, and it's giving them a big hug and sort of merging itself with them. So there's really
Yes.
no way to battle it. It's really creepy. This is the creepiest of the angels, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely not only in terms of its sexual imagery, but in terms of how it tries to, it feels really dangerous. Like if Rey
Hmm.
hadn't absorbed it in and exploded it, they would have been absolutely screwed.
Hmm.
I don't know if there was like a good way to fight it. This is debatably the most dangerous angel,
Yes,
I think.
it's very
Um,
insidious.
Someone has to die to even kill it.
Mhm.
So that's pretty intense.
Which also shows the escalation of each angel. So the last one was out in space and they couldn't fight it because it was out in space. Now this one is unfightable because it's so insidious and intangible. There's nothing
Hmm.
to there's nothing to really fight, and it's not even trying to fight them really. It's trying to take them over.
Yeah, it's trying to take them over. It's almost like an anti-AT field type of angel that just breaks
Yeah.
down people's walls by force and sort of tries to become one with you. Um, we get a lot of EOE imagery here. This is the one
In the
episode,
director's cut.
especially in the director's cut. Yeah, the director's
Hmm.
cut really tries to tie this into EOE like quite heavily. Um, there's the scene later on where they were just in some random elevator. In the on-air version, it kind of looked like a Tron elevator. And then they changed it to one for EOE, and then we get a lot of Giant Naked Ray stuff where
Hmm.
we get like white Giga Ray imagery throughout this. So
Hmm.
this this definitely evokes a lot of that imagery of, you know, how Giant Naked Ray kind of breaks down everyone's AT fields and merges everyone together into one being for instrumentality. This is very much like a
Yeah.
precursor to all that.
It's not really foreshadowing, because they did this after when they were planning EOE, so it's not really foreshadowing, but it's also not. I mean, I guess it is foreshadowing because it was made before EOE, I believe. But yeah.
I think it was just before EOE was released that they released the director's cut stuff to tie it all
Hmm.
together and kind of
Yeah.
bind everything. Um,
Shut my door. Resume. Okay. Yeah. Go on.
so in terms of tying into EOE, I think it's pretty cool that it tries to do
Hmm.
that.
I mean, the EOE imagery is great. I'm not complaining about that for sure.
Yeah. I don't even think it's that much of a cheap shot in the sense that everyone has the director's cut stuff and access to it, and most people are watching that before they watch EOE. So I think you could consider it foreshadowing, even if it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
sort
yeah.
of
It's absolutely
retroactive.
foreshadowing. I think anyone who
Um,
watched it on Netflix heard about it and was like, "Oh, I gotta watch this show," and it's on Netflix. The original cut is not on Netflix at all. So
yeah.
certainly in its whole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, it absolutely is foreshadowing that way.
And let's talk about the conversation that Ray has with Armiziel, kind of
Yeah.
in the um in sort of a primordial soup of life type of strange liminal space. Um, and she's talking to Armiziel, and Armiziel has sort of taken the form of another Ray, which speaks to
Hmm.
the fact that Ray has anxiety about not being an individual or not being herself, and the angel's kind of
Yeah.
mocking her. It's taking on that shape.
It
It's
was
like
also a
you're
parasite, so it takes on the form of whatever it's engaging
y-
with.
yes, but in terms of just like themes, it's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
really
True. True. True.
it's being that duplicate and kind of revealing that Ray is a clone and that she's not an individual, which preys upon her uh one of her like main uh kind of psychological issues is like that she doesn't value herself and doesn't see herself as an individual worth protecting or saving.
Hmm.
um in some ways, uh I think part of Ray 2's arc here, right, with the self-sacrifice type of deal, because even though it
Yeah.
is self-destructive and it's bad for her character, she's doing it specifically to save people that she cares about because she's
But no
formed
one told her to,
relationships.
is what's interesting to me.
Yes. No one told her to do this. In fact, Gendo seems to not be okay with that.
No.
So she's kind of acting on her own free will and doing something self-sacrificing to save people she cares about Shinji in this case, I think.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um and um do you remember what the angel tells her in when they're kind of having the conversation?
No. I don't actually. I think it's a lot of philosophical, like confusing philosophy. I think it is questions like, are you a person? Are you an individual? And Ray's like, yeah, I am, I think. I think that's mostly what it was.
You're in pain, aren't you? Your heart is aching. aching no, that's not it. It's
There's some
loneliness.
comment Ray makes, not in that scene, but where she's like, "Do I want to become one with Akari?" And I'm like, "Calm down, Ano. Just calm down. Go take a cold shower. It's fine."
um
Mhm.
she talks about how alone she is in spite of uh kind of being with a lot of people and everything, and loneliness really drives her in some ways. Like she feels
Mhm.
like she's not human. um and that kind of is a supreme type of loneliness when you've kind of cut yourself off psychologically from everyone, where you're like, I'm not a person. uh and she's kind of literally not, which I guess
Yeah.
is the hard thing for her to grapple with.
I have a
But
question.
yeah,
What do you think it means that she sees Gendo as she's dying? She sees a little flash of Gendo, and then the explosion happens.
it's Gendo smiling, right?
Yeah, it's
From
Gendo smiling at her.
It's the
It's from
same.
when he saved her
Yeah,
life.
from when he saves her. um I think this Ray is still has a problem in respect to almost like relying on Gendo for her sense of self in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
that someone was able to protect her. And so therefore, like, they care about her and see her as somebody, as an individual, which kind of, um I think goes to show that like Ray sort of misinterpreted this relationship still. It's
Mm-hmm.
only until she gets like, we get into Ray 3, that Ray 3 can kind of recognize that Gendo is like toxic, and his relationship with her is kind of twisted. Maybe it's because it's like a fresh perspective on a lot of the
I
memories
think so, but I
that she
think
had.
also Ray 2 has a different relationship with Gendo because they kind of have a working relationship.
Mm,
It is toxic, but Gendo does actually put effort into it. Whereas with Ray 3, by that point, she's nothing more than a tool to him to
yeah.
complete the plan he's been working on. He doesn't have a personal interpersonal relationship with her the way he did with Ray 2. Like you see them talking, like there's that scene where Shinji's staring at them and she's laughing, and he tells a joke or something and she laughs at it. So there is something there between them that does not exist with Ray 3, which is why I think Ray 3 doesn't really care about Gendo as much, because she doesn't have those personal experiences. She just has the facts in her head basically.
Yeah, it's interesting that Ray 3 chooses Shinji over Gendo in
Mhm.
EOE. And I think it's maybe, well, even in this episode Shinji is more compassionate, right? Like he goes to check on her after
Mhm.
she's dead, and seems to be worried for her. So even in the small amount of interaction that Ray 3 and Shinji have together, it still seems like he cares more. Uh
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. I was gonna say something. What was I gonna say? It's in the notes, and I'm trying to find them. But uh, yeah. So Ray dying is really hard to pinpoint because Ray dying should be an act break, but I can't think of what act break it is. I don't. It doesn't make sense as an act break really, because it's not the beginning of Act 3, and it's not the beginning of Act 2 really either. So I guess it's kind of a middle of Act 2 moment.
Yeah, midpoint twist is a common thing in
Yeah.
which, in screenwriting, in Western screenwriting, if you had an 8 sequence structure, which is pretty typical, like a lot of movies do 8 sequences, where it's like, okay, you have 2 sequences for Act 1, then 2 sequences for the start of Act 2, and then 2 sequences to end Act 2, and then another 2 sequences for Act 3. And at the very middle of that, like after 4 sequences, you'd have a twist or something that would shake things up. And so the midpoint here is Ray dying, and it kind of does act as that twist and commercial break kind of moment
Yeah.
where you're like, oh, and in TV there's 4 acts typically.
Yeah.
um and in anime there's 2 acts, but it kind of acts as like a condensed like 4 act version. And
Right.
so 4 acts are defined in part by commercial breaks. And in this case, there's a commercial break. I'm pretty sure the title card rolls after Ray dies. So
I'm
it's,
almost positive. Yeah.
yes. So it's trying to act as that midpoint twist slash kind of, you know, halfway through Act 2 in a normal
Mm-hmm.
TV show episode that would be like an hour long. But in this situation, what confuses me or what baffles me is that it's so climactic. Like,
Yeah.
usually with TV, they do have the big hitting moment for it escalates. You have
Yeah.
before each commercial break, there's like something tense that happens, but then there's something more tense that happens in the next one, and then more tense in the
Yeah.
next one, and so you have this
Anime only has
gradual.
one commercial break, so.
Yeah. And in this case, what confuses me is just that Ray's death is so climactic. I guess it had to happen here though, but it feels like something that you'd almost end an episode on.
Yeah.
You'd feel like, oh my god, tune in
Oh my
next
God,
week.
Ray's dead. But
Yeah.
she comes back, so I guess it'd be kind of a cheat if you had
It
that as the cliffhanger, and then next
well,
episode she's fine. Um,
it feels kind of almost like two episodes stitched together in some ways, because then you have the kind of ramping up to the midpoint, and then we're back down low energy, and then we ramp up to Ritsuko again. Kind of
yeah.
it it doesn't hold on to that tension, and a lot of normal episodes of something would hold on to that tension and make it keep increasing after that point.
Yep.
um like even episodes in Ava would do that. You had stuff like with Asuka, in the previous episode, where Asuka's big psychologically damaging moment was essentially act 3. Like it was building up to that.
Yeah.
And so uh it also had a denouement. Things kind of fell down and relaxed after Ray hurled the spear and basically outshone Asuka
Mm-hmm.
for the last time, which really broke her. And then we got that scene with Asuka and Shinji, sort of chilling on the rooftop, and Shinji can't approach her, and that acted as the denouement.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe both of these episodes were written by the same person,
Yeah.
but there's no sense of ramping up and keep things going and like keep things building and things like that. Like there is in episode 22, we get a
Right. It
ramp up
almost
to the middle
crashes
and then a
after
crash.
after
Yeah.
Ray dies. It almost crashes. Well, there's a little scene here where Masato and Ritsuko are talking. Masato's like, quick, get the search parties out there. We got to find if there's any chance, we have to find her. Or she says, we need to find her. And then Ritsuko says, if there's anything left to find. And she says it really coldly, almost like she doesn't care a little
Yeah.
bit. Which, one theme of this episode, though, playing into that, though, is death, I think. We open with Ritsuko's cat dying. Masato is trying to get over Kaji's death. I think really it's Masato, Ritsuko are kind of the two pillars of this story. Ritsuko a little more so than Masato, and it's interesting that was the choice that they made, because that's not typical. It's really cool, actually. I think it's what makes Evangelion unique, is that they will, even though this is the Ray episode, quote unquote, it's really about these two mentor figures who would not normally get a lot of attention, and really getting into their heads.
And Shinji he's almost like kind of thrown to the wayside. It's like a side element in this episode.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
He makes a realization that Ray 3 is not Ray 2. Like he's like, "Oh my god,
Yeah,
you're
he
alive.
quickly realizes it. Very
You're
quick.
alive."
She
And then
realizes it too.
yeah, and then he he soon finds out, like, wait, this isn't the same one. And then he's confused as to why, and we get that explanation from Ritsuko, where Ritsuko and Misato kind of lead Shinji through where Ray was created. And
Yeah, that's a little later. Let's just quickly
yeah,
go through the rest.
we'll put a capstone on that for now.
Yeah, we'll put a pin in that. And yeah, so Ray's okay. She survived the massive explosion. Everyone's happy. It's fine. She's fine, guys. Totally. She survived that massive explosion. But I mean, I guess Masato and Ritsuko survived, and Masato just had like a little cast when when Unit 3 exploded. So it's not out of the question. But it becomes apparent very quickly this Ray is not the same Ray. We get a little scene of Ray going home after being in the hospital. She's crying. She doesn't know why, because she's not the same person. Again, she's just a reincarnation, so she sort of has Ray 2's memories, but she doesn't understand them. And then she picks up Gendo's glasses, and she looks like she's going to crush him, but she can't do it. Then there's a lot of Seeley in this episode. I don't really like Seeley, to be honest. They're a bit goofy. Like, they're necessary, but they're very goofy. I
Well,
wish
we
they'd
need
either...
kind of an antagonistic force beyond Gendo for the show to work, but they aren't really compelling, in
No.
their as characters. Lawrence Keel, the main one,
Yeah.
they hint at some things like, oh, he's being held together with machinery in EOE, and we see that, and that's why he has
Yeah.
that visor, and he wants immortality because they're all old men who are dying and they want immortality, but
He's a cyborg and he wants to live forever.
but it's still, they're not great villains.
No.
And they all
He's
have
probably the most
goofy voices.
Keel is probably the most interesting one, to be
Yeah.
honest. Like, he's the one who's the most pragmatic, I think. All the others are always like kind of whining, and he's just like, no, this is what we're doing.
Weirdly, the only one I remember aside from Keel is the one that is like wah, like that.
The one with the really distinctively annoying voice.
Yeah, and and he has like a hook nose and kind of like weird Aoba hair.
Oh, yeah, that guy. I was thinking of the one with the mustache.
These characters are really, they're really goofy, but some of the scenes that they have are pretty intimidating. Like when Sele is talking to Ritsuko, it's so like kind of grisly and demeaning in some ways.
Yeah, it's definitely demeaning. Oh yeah, it's humiliating for Ritsuko.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they even say to her like, "You've been cast aside by Akari. How do you feel about that?" And then she's like, "I don't really care." And they're like, "You're a strong woman, no doubt about it." They say something like that.
Yeah.
But
there are also
with Ritsuko, that's literally Gendo is saying, "I'm not sending you Rei. Ritsuko, you go instead." So he's giving up Ritsuko to save Rei again.
Yeah,
and she's getting a bit pissed off about it, I think.
Yeah, well, especially he's like, okay, Rei's expendable, right? I'm supposed to be somebody that you love. I don't think she even knows what Gendo's true goals are with instrumentality. It doesn't seem like she even realizes that he wants to get Yui back, because she's having a love affair with Gendo. It's something that we kind of learn, or about in the next episode. Really clenches it at 24, but it's kind of hinted at.
Kind of a funny line in 24 about that. Yeah,
it's hinted at throughout most of the show that they're having a love affair of some sorts, and Gendo is sort of using her emotionally in a similar way to how he used her mother. In regards to Ritsuko, she feels like, oh, I shouldn't be upstaged by Rei, right? Like, it's almost like she's losing to Yui in some ways again.
Kind of.
And but she doesn't, she's surprised by the fact that Gendo keeps choosing Rei over her,
A little bit. I don't think she's as pathetic as Naoka. I don't think she's quite... I think she's a little more clear-eyed than Naoka was. I think Naoka thought, Yui's out of the way, Yui's dead, now me and Gendo can be together. I don't think that's what Ritsuko's thinking so much.
No, but I don't think she's like, is she aware of Gendo's like motivations, like true motivations?
No, I don't think she knows about instrumentality properly, but I think her affair with Gendo is a lot less, it's more just something to satisfy her rather than her having genuine affection for Gendo.
I don't think she actually genuinely cares, but it is sort of a it does make her feel insignificant that this clone is like is upstaging her as an individual. Like, it's like we can keep making Reis, they don't matter, but there's only one of Ritsuko, and Gendo
she's really
seems to
indifferent
value
towards
her.
Asuka, especially. Asuka, she really doesn't care about. And then Rei, she's sort of Rei's just a science experiment to her, I think, is the impression I get.
Well, it's like, how are you putting something that's not human above me as a human? And I think that really bothers her.
I don't know if the thing that's sort of sticking with me is I don't know if she expects that much from Gendo. I don't think she's looking for his affection in that way. I think it's more like she really she doesn't like Rei, and she's losing it. In this episode especially, she's just losing it slowly but surely as the episode progresses. there's also quickly before we move on from it, there's a moment where it's literally just set up for End of Evangelion, where the Sealing Council's talking, and then they're like, "We've made 8 Ava units," and he's like, "4 more and we're done," and then that's literally the whole scene, and I thought that was kind of stupid.
Do you know? I don't know if that was a director's cut thing or if that was in the original.
I'm not
Or
sure.
not.
I think it was in the original. I don't think there was a director's cut edition, but I'm not
I
positive
think you're
about that.
right. I want to say that that's correct. That Sele talking about the.
I think all the Sealy scenes are in the original. I don't think they added any Sealy scenes.
Yeah.
They're too stupid. There's no way. We need more Sealy. Oh, no. Well, obviously, there's one in 24 where they added Sealy, which is a completely pointless scene. It doesn't make any sense, but we'll talk about that in our next episode. But it's so nonsensical.
Yeah, we'll have a lot to say about episode 24.
We have a lot to say about 24. We have a lot to say about 24. I will go on. But there is also here Ritsuko calls up Shinji. She specifically like calls him up on the phone and is like, "Hey Shinji, meet me at headquarters. I got something to tell you." It's a really odd moment. Is this really the first time Ritsuko's ever spoken to Shinji? I think it might be.
It might be.
It might be.
It's
the first
definitely
meaningful interaction they've had.
It's definitely the only meaningful one. If she wasn't just like, "Wow, Shinji, your sync rate is so good," or whatever. Like,
yeah, something perfunctory, functional. It's the first non-functional dialogue that Ritsuko has with Shinji.
Yeah.
So she calls him up. She's trying to get into Terminal Dogma to go to Rei's area, I guess, and she can't do it because they changed her code name or something. And Masato pops up with a gun behind her out of the shadows, which happens a lot in these hallways in Terminal Dogma. It literally happened in, was it 15? Yeah, in 15. Masato popped up behind Kaji, and it was almost the exact same scene. Masato likes lurking in the shadows, I guess, with a gun. So this is actually really what this is, and what I've kind of been commenting on as we've gone, is this is really the end of Masato and Ritsuko's little arc, because they've really had an arc going where Ritsuko and Masato have kind of had animosity towards each other. Like, Ritsuko's been lying to Masato, and Masato hasn't been happy about it, and Masato's been getting closer and closer to the truth, and Ritsuko refuses to tell her anything. And so there's a lot of tension between those two characters, and it kind of comes to a head here. Would you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would say that this is pretty much the end of their friendship as we know it.
It might be the last time they talk to each other, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
I keep saying things like that, and then it's not true. I'll be like, this is the last time Gendo talks to Shinji, and then in the very next episode, they have a conversation.
Well, I'm pretty sure that after Ritsuko kills the Rei clones, she's interrogated and then put into a prison cell.
But they talk in the next episode. I remember they do.
I mean, they might interact a little bit in EOE from what I remember, but
no, in 24 they talk. In 24 they talk because Ritsuko tells Masato about Kaoru.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm totally wrong. I was right to question myself. But yeah, so this is basically their last meaningful interaction as friends. Certainly they never, get drinks together again after this, is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But Ritsuko again is just losing her mind in this whole sequence where they go down and they're in like Rei's bedroom, quote unquote, her bedroom. And Ritsuko explains quickly this is where Rei was born because Rei is not human. What is she?
She is a clone of Yui Ikari mixed with the DNA of Lilith, essentially. So her body, I think, is sort of both. It's a little bit of Lilith and a little bit of Yui, and kind of created into this what is supposed to be an empty vessel without a soul. Really, It has a functioning brain, but I guess what's kind of interesting about Rei is that she does develop a personality and a soul through experience. So Ava's kind of arguing that personhood is through like lived experiences and things like that. Like, I think philosophically, Ava would kind of argue that a robot could be a person as long as it had enough interactions with others and kind of developed into one through experience. So
Yeah.
kind of the same sort of deal. But yeah, she's part alien, part human.
All woman.
Number one waifu.
Number one waifu.
She won't tell you no. She'll
20
just
years
slap
running.
you in the face if you.
Actually, I don't think she's the number one Evangelion character. I think she's been the number one Evangelion character for a while. At one point she was, but in the polls.
I think in Japan considers Rei to be the most popular character, but I'm not sure if that's changed over the decades, but at one point, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. She's just so perfect. She's the perfect
I know
woman.
that Japanese consider Asuka to be too much. Like they consider her overbearing.
She's too German.
Yeah. They're like, I don't want a woman that would
I don't want a woman that would
talk back
and
tell me I'm an idiot.
Call me an idiot. Yeah, I don't like that. She's rude. If I was like crying in her bed, she wouldn't just say, "You're great."
Yeah, so one thing is that Rei plays into a lot more of the sensibilities of what Japanese culture expects from women, where women are supposed to be sort of subservient and quiet and kind of, and but she's sort of a parody of a lot of those expectations of womanhood in Japan.
Yeah, she's kind of a critique of it, if anything.
Yeah, because like Rei is quiet and is subservient, but she's socially awkward, kind of rude indirectly in some ways, a little bit a little bit aggressive at random points too.
Yeah.
And it's sort of it's interesting because she's it's the ideal woman, but she also doesn't love you and has a hard time with emotions and connections and other things like that, and
no agency. Nothing about her is authentic, really, because she has no agency. She makes no decisions for herself.
I would definitely say that she serves in stark contrast to the rest of the women in Eva, because like Ritsuko has like wants, desires, passions, like flaws and everything like that. Misato too, Asuka as well. They're very much people, and all that entails. And they're not perfect. Neither is Rei, but none of them are quiet and subservient except for Rei.
No,
it's just like real women. They have thoughts about things and they vocalize them and other things.
Yeah,
it's not a fantasy.
This isn't that weird for anime. Anime does have a lot of diverse female characters in it. We've kind of talked about this before, but it is cool that you have two really distinctly different female characters in a room talking about a third female character and what she means and what she represents. And yeah, and Ritsuko's really, really upset in this episode. She to continue the death theme quickly. When they go to the Eva graveyard, I'm not sure what this Eva graveyard is really supposed to represent in terms of theming, other than death, which is the main theme of this episode. But these are all the Evangelion failures. They tried to make an Evangelion like 100 times, and all the bones of those failed experiments.
Yeah, the Eva graveyard.
In a giant cross-shaped graveyard.
Well, this is where the contact experiment happened, right? Or yeah, so this is where Yui disappeared into Ava Unit 1 and everything like that. And we're kind of getting a glimpse into how Ava units are created. And from what I understand, those people that you see on Lilith, right, the sort of legs that are hanging down?
Yeah.
That's where the Ava units are kind of grown from. They're kind of, they're birthed from the bottom of Lilith. And I guess some of them failed. They turned
a lot of them failed. This is a very big graveyard.
They turned into weird abominations, probably, that maybe couldn't be contained. And so, yeah.
Or they weren't fully formed. They're like missing arms and things.
Yeah, probably.
Ritsuko's also smirking through this whole scene, so I think either she's happy that she's letting like the truth be known, and this is her kind of penance. This is her kind of making up for her mistakes, or she's a sadist and she enjoys the emotional torture that she's putting Misato and Shinji through as they find all this creepy stuff out that she did. I kind of think it's the latter, having said both of those things out loud. It's a pretty disturbing smile.
I mean, she is kind of smirking at this too, but I almost always have read it as, she is getting like a sadistic pleasure from them knowing what she's been dealing with this whole time, like kind of
Yeah.
like all this burden, but she's a wreck herself. Like she doesn't like that she's been involved to this degree or knows about all this, and it has taken an emotional toll. And so I think there's just some schadenfreude that comes from kind of like, oh, now you know what I've been going through type of deal.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
did. We skipped over another scene. Sorry, we're jumping around here a bit.
Is
But
it the scene where Ritsuko shows Shinji Rei's creation room?
no, we skipped two earlier scenes with Masato. Actually,
Right.
we skipped one where she's listening to the recording from Kaji because he put the little pill thing when they were mid coitus. He put it somewhere where she'd notice it, and it contained a little microchip, and it was apparently one of like 20 ways he would send her this information. He's basically given her all his research on Seele and the Evangelion and everything, and the Marduk Institute and all that. And so she's got that now, and she's listening to it, and she said, I'm tired of waiting for the phone that won't ring. I'm gonna go do something. So it shows her, she's kind of moving, she's going from depression to acceptance a little bit, I guess, in terms of the stages of grief. She's decided, I'm not gonna sit around and mope about Kaji. I'm gonna avenge him. I'm gonna find
Hmm.
out why he died, and I'm gonna, you know,
I mean, that's
expose
how
all
she
this.
grapples with a lot of things, right? Where it's like vengeance kind of
Yeah,
drove
she's
her
a
with
very
her
vengeful
father.
character. You wouldn't
Yeah.
you would think Ritsuko would be this like messed up psychopath, a little bit. I'm saying, and you wouldn't think Masato is this bitter, vengeful woman, but they both are. They both have so much. There's so much shade on this like image of these like cute anime girls, and it's really cool. It's very effective and it's very subtle, and I think it's clever. The other scene that we didn't talk about, which is a very controversial scene, is when Shinji's upset because he thinks Rei's dead.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to talk about this scene, but and then Masato comes in and she's like, "There's only one thing I can do for you right now," and she tries to take his hand, and then Shinji's like, "Don't do that," and then he like shies away from her, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Okay," and she leaves, and then she's like, "Is he not into women?" That's like her reaction to that, which is a little strange. I don't really know what to make of this scene. And then she's like, Pen, come here, console me." I'm like, what's going on with Masato in this episode?
I have this friend um
Hmm.
who goes by, she her, and she got a tattoo of Misato um when she was like 18, 19 years old, and called me up just the other day, and it's just like, I don't know how to feel about having a child predator like tattooed on my body. And then I'm like, I personally have never interpreted Misato as somebody who is trying to sexually assault Shinji or
Hmm.
anything like that. um I think that she was probably just trying to hug
Predator's a
him.
strong word, is what I'm gonna say. But go on.
Yeah, I think she was just trying to hug him. That's my personal feeling. I think in EOE, when we get there, there's a lot to talk about. But EOE, Misato had like no intention of of doing
Well,
anything
yeah,
sexual
Ioi's
with
a little more
Shinji.
overt about this.
But
I don't think I was kind of being funny. It's not quite what she says. She doesn't quite say like, is he not into women? She says something about like, is he afraid of women? Is he afraid of intimacy? And then she goes to Penrith. What she's looking for is just like emotional consolidation. So I don't. So if she is attempting that with Shinji, I think it comes from a place of more her just being completely despondent and like out of her mind rather than this
right,
idea that she's into little boys, which I don't think is the case.
so you're saying kind of like this, the intense circumstances are kind of driving her to react in a way that demonstrates her psychological damage rather than necessarily like that she
Yeah,
on
like I
an
understand why it makes people uncomfortable, but
yeah.
I don't, like, and it makes me uncomfortable talking about this. But I don't think it's I don't think it's predatory behavior. I think it's, uh, I think it's her not knowing. I think it's her making mistakes. I think it's her not knowing quite what to do.
Right.
I don't know if that's a good view on it, but whatever.
Like I said,
Certainly do not condone child abuse.
I don't
of
think
any
that there's anything sexual going on here, it personally, but like, you know,
Yeah.
it's her wording is very vague. It's up for interpretation. I think a lot of people interpret it that way. Some people don't. And I think
It's
both
extremely
readings are
ambiguous.
pretty fair. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then we finally get to the final scene where Ritsuko finally has that moment of release. She completely loses it and she destroys all the backup rays. She just murders all of them at once.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds her, obviously. I don't know if she knows exactly what happened to her mother necessarily. I think she just has a feeling, but she's like, I'm no better than my mother. 2 women, both absurd. Um, yep. So that's Ritsuko. Poor Ritsuko. I feel bad for her. She just
Ritsuko
doesn't.
is a shockingly compelling and complex character for somebody who would normally be forgotten about as
Mhm.
science techno babble lady.
Yeah.
Um,
She's literally just there to make the Avas, but nope. She's got an arc, and they literally transposed her into Psychopaths. That's how cool Ritsuko is. Another show, just like Whole Cloth stole her, so and made her a lesbian. Uh,
right, I remember that character actually.
I actually like that character, but she is kind of just Ritsuko. Uh,
Mhm. You know, as they say, uh, imitation is the greatest form of flattery from the mediocre.
yeah. Uh, and Ritsuko also, much like her mother, is prepared to die in this moment. She says, "If you're gonna kill me, go ahead." She says that to Misato. And Masato apparently says something pretentious here, but I didn't write what she said. I just started to write something and then I forgot about it, I guess.
You can't die here. Death is but an
I
illusion.
don't think she says anything about Ritsuko dying. She does say, oh yeah, Masato says something like, all people who are touched by the Evangelion are cursed to be unhappy. She says something like that. And then Masato says, as if I'm any better. And then the episode ends. So
it
all along it was a Ritsuko Masato story, and that's how we know, because that's the note it ends on.
Yeah,
Masato
it doesn't really have a, as we kind of discussed, it doesn't have a denouement. It kind of just ends.
doesn't even really have a through line, honestly.
Yeah. This
It really
episode,
Mhm.
a lot happened because it had to, because it needed to for the sake of the story, but I do think that there are a lot of really good beats in isolation
Mhm.
here, but it doesn't really come together. Like as a whole, we deal with too many plot threads kind of happening all at once, and none of them really tie together in any particular way.
Mhm.
Uh and there's a
Too
lack
many
of
Sealy
focus
scenes, honestly.
on just who's the A plot, who is the most important. Is it Ray? Is it Ritsuko? Should probably really
Yeah, I mean, I
um
think the A plot is the Ritsuko Masato stuff.
yeah,
That's
but
the
it's
A
not
plot.
introduced well as like in act 1 that's what it's going
No,
to be. It kind of just surprisingly ends up that way.
kind of is
So,
that way. Also, Shinji's just there for that whole final scene. He doesn't contribute anything.
yeah,
He's just
Shinji's
there to
just
hear all
there.
this.
And then in episode 24 we get some lip service about it where he's just like, "Ah, Ray."
He
But
gets his own little breakdown in episode 24 about this.
yeah. I think part of
uh,
what makes episode 24 really compelling is that it's like extremely obvious what what, you know, relationships matter, what the A plot is, what the B plot is. And especially
episode 24 is the Satsuko episode. All the Satsuko episodes,
yeah,
like
it's
we've
very
talked about this
clear
100
who
times.
takes priority
Mm-hmm.
in a
He always
Satsuko
does it.
episode. Yeah.
Opening act, opening scene. He'll tell you this character's the main character. Here's the main conflict, and then you see it pan out that way. He's very good at that.
As opposed to like 22 as well, where 22 is very obvious, like this is about Asuka
It's an
100%.
Asuka story. Yep.
And episode 23 it's a little hazy. It's just a little hazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is they didn't know what to do with Ray a lot of the time, but
Yeah, I
or
mean,
like how to write her.
I feel like Rey is kind of maybe one of the more, like, I like what she contributes to the show. I like the themes of objectification. I like the commodification of women and the commentary on like Japanese society, and how they expect women to be like. There's a lot to love about Rey. I think her arc ends really strongly in End of Evangelion, but it kind of just stumbles and trips around for the majority of the series itself.
Well,
So
actually, I just thought of something. So this is Ray 3, right?
yeah,
So this episode's Ray 3. The other Ray episode was actually a Satsuko episode, the Ray 1 and 2. So I think what he did really well in that two-parter, which again is a strange two-parter because I think it's the first part has like no action in it whatsoever. It's all set up, and then the second part is all payoff. But what he did really well was he made it a Shinji Rei story. So immediately Shinji's like, who is Rei? What's her relationship to my father? What's my relationship to her? And then by the end, you find the answer to that question. This doesn't really have a dramatic question in the same way. There's no who is Rei? What is Rei? No one's really looking at her or wondering about her. We just really get a lot of scenes where Ritsuko and Masato are kind of talking about her and at the end. And Masato's sad when she dies, but she's so distracted by Kaji, she has to keep thinking and talking about Kaji, which is interesting. I like I can't even vocalize really where this episode is, what its perspective is, but I can tell you very clearly what the perspective was of Rei 1 and 2. It was Shinji's perspective on Rei, and that's more easy to follow, I think.
is this like, okay? So Rey being a clone was pretty obvious up to this point. I think an adult viewer would have figured it out probably a while ago at this point.
Revealed it a while ago.
Yeah. So what new do we learn about Rey too, and her creation from this, or do we just get it kind of reiterated?
It's so hard because I've known for so long what Rey is that I'm kind of trying to figure out what would be the big revelations in this episode, and I think a lot of it is just shocking scientific revelations, like Rey's a clone. Rey is like, I don't think we knew that Rey was actually a clone before this episode. Now that I think about it, I don't think we knew that until this like exactly how she was a clone until this very moment, because we know that Rey 1 died. We know that Naoka killed Rey 1, but we didn't know. We just knew that Rey was still alive. We knew that Naoka killed Rey and that Rey was still alive somehow. And we kind of suspect that Rey has some connection to Yui, because when Naoka sees her, she's like, oh my god, it's Yui in the flesh. Or whatever she says.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I think there is a lot of story revelations here that just don't have the same impact anymore because we've seen the show so many times that we've completely forgotten that they're supposed to be impactful.
Yeah. Like, that's what I'm kind of trying to get at, is like, okay, well, if you're smart, you would have figured it out probably by now, but I doubt a lot of people did or have.
I don't know if the information
I don't think I did. You know, like, so
I don't think
this
the information was actually there. I think we're sort of looking at this too much in retrospective.
Right.
I think.
Well, if this is the first time that we're kind of learning that she's indeed a clone and everything, then at least that's a pretty good revelation to close the episode out on, I guess.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I don't really have much else to say about this episode, to be honest. I'm surprised we talked about it for an hour.
Yeah, I think that's good. I guess closing thoughts for me are, I like what Rey represents. I think that, you know, like when I did a character analysis of Rey on my YouTube channel, I still stand by everything I said. I think there's a lot to look into her and everything. From a traditional character arc perspective, it does kind of stumble, kind of flubs around until towards the end. And but I like what she, you know, how she contributes to the show and the show's dynamic, and I still enjoy this episode in spite of its faults, like structurally. And really like Ritsuko. She's interesting. Love Misato in spite of the fact that she might love children.
This podcast does not enjoy what am I trying to say? Does not endorse. That's the word. This podcast does not endorse child predators in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, please don't do that. It's one of the worst things that any
If you
person can do
suffer
to
from
someone
such
else.
thoughts and feelings, please consult a psychiatrist
Yeah.
immediately and do not act upon them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I completely agree. So, yeah, what
Please,
he said.
if you're listening to this podcast and you're having thoughts and feelings about children, please consult a psychiatrist. I'm not joking. I mean, I am kind of joking. I'm you know what I'm saying. Anyway, my thoughts on this episode are I'm not joking about the seriousness of predatory behavior, is what I'm saying. This episode is really cool. There's a lot of really cool stuff in it. The Angel, cool as hell. Ritsuko, awesome. Great to see some character depth there. Masato, great to see her doing something and the depth of her characterization. Shinji, please do more. Take up a more active role. This is your show. Don't just get called in and like watch things happen. Do some stuff. Take action. Come on.
He's been kind of on the sidelines, or been on the sidelines
He's been
since
sidelined
19.
for like 5 episodes at this point.
Yeah, since episode 19, he hasn't done much besides just watch the fallout of everyone else tearing themselves apart around him. So
Even though there was like a whole episode 19 was all about like stand up, do things for yourself. Only you have the power. And he's like, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna do it. And then he's just been like in the sidelines ever since then.
kind of forcibly though.
Kind of forcibly. Yeah, he was benched on purpose.
Yeah.
And then what else do I have to say about this episode? Looked good. Animation was pretty good. Not the best animated episode of the show, but pretty good. Script was a little wonky. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for listening. This has been 2 Gays, 1 Episode, and I am Michael, aka GoatJesus.
And I'm Alex. We did a really funny bonus episode, like at this point 2 months ago, I think, by the time this airs, about things we would have made in an Evangelion video game on our Patreon exclusive. Go pledge to our Patreon and check that out because it was really fun and really amusing, and I enjoyed it. And you probably
You'll get to know who Jessica America is.
So. Jessica Pence, aka Jessica Eagleson, aka oh. What if she's Jessica Eagleson and you don't know she's Jessica Pence, and later on you find out she's Jessica Pence? That all okay. See, we just added to it. Added, but you don't know what we're talking about unless you go listen to another episode on the Patreon. So, just saying.
Yeah, it was a really fun episode. Thanks so much for listening, and you guys have a good one.
Yeah, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.